let's begin with our session. The idea for the next hour is we'd love to tell you a little bit of about WisdomCircle, the organization that's hosting this event for alumni of IIT Bombay. And we are partnered with the IIT Bombay Alumni Association. Thank you very much for allowing us this platform to host this event. And thank you everyone who've joined us. And then we are going to jump right into the event. We're going to do introductions. Then we're going to talk about, well, how is it that you can prepare for and make the best use of your skill and expertise as a retired professional, and then have time for questions, if any, right? Someone just mentioned a point in the chat and wondering if this is only for IITians. Well, it's for the IIT Bombay Alumni Association members and their family members. So really, it's for everyone, right? So, you know, it's for everybody. So without much more ado, I'm Tanishtha. Welcome to today afternoon's event on retiring retirement. WisdomCircle is a platform to connect skilled retired professionals to meaningful opportunities post-retirement. I myself also am an alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 2009. So it's very exciting to be hosting this and moderating this event. Always lovely to be back in touch with the alma mater. I had the education focus area in marketing and partnerships here, but what I'm really here to tell you more about are the two speakers that we have with us today. We do have a few more slides about WisdomCircle, but we can get into that around the question and answer session later on. For now, all I'd like to share with you is that we are an online platform. WisdomCircle.com is an online platform to connect retired professionals with meaningful work opportunities post-retirement. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. Nupur, if as I introduce our guests, if you could spotlight them so that everyone can see them, it would be lovely. So the first speaker that I'd love to introduce is Mr. Kamlesh Bhaurao Pandey, batch of 1974, IITBAA. His introduction, I'm going to try to do justice to his introduction. There is just way too much to share, but I'll try. He's the founder of Maitri, an organization which makes higher technical education more industry oriented, and helps teacher conferences and related to engineering and the skills around that, try and keep it industry relevant, right? That's the focus area. He was also, he's held many positions. He was the Vice President R&D and Innovation with Thermax Limited. He was the Head of Technology and Management with Mahindra & Mahindra. He was the Chief of R&D with Forbes Marshall. Before that, he was also with Tata Consulting Engineers, in the corporate R&D of BHEL and Tata Energy, and so on and so forth. Right. Thank you, Mr. Kamlesh Pandey, for joining us. We're very happy to have you with us here today. And he is in conversation today with Brigadier Surjit Singh Pavla, IIT Bombay batch of 1983, with more than 17 years. It's a similar challenge here too, right? I'm going to try to do justice to the introduction. There's, of course, way too much to tell. So I'm going to try to keep it short and let their talking really introduce them, as you're going to hear through the session. He has more than 17 years of experience in academia. He's held senior positions like Pro-Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, Director and Pro-Vice-Chancellor with various universities, and even founded 3 universities. Across his vast experience, which included the Army, clearly, Brigadier Pavla, he held the command of several Army units, which included, in addition to holding command of several Army units, he also conducted engineering professional work, administrative work, and he was also a professor at the College of Military Engineering, Pune. Welcome, Brigadier Pabla, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
here
you,
today.
ma'am.
Lovely. All right. With introductions done, we'd love to jump into the conversation for today. As you know, we're here to hear from the both of them about um, how they went about their work post whatever they consider to be retirement. Um, an interesting nugget, by the way, which may or may not come up through the discussion. Although their batches of graduation from IIT are different, it turns out that they're born in the exact same year. I won't tell you which, but maybe you'll find out through the course. We found this out while speaking with them earlier. Um, so let us start with you, Mr. Kamlesh Pandey, right? Um, well, first of all, before I ask you my real question, tell me, do you consider yourself retired? You're on mute, sir.
A short answer for that is emphatic no.
And but did you go through did you superannuate in a company?
Yeah, I did. I actually superannuated in Thermax. And it was something like 7-8 years ago. But as my wife keeps complaining, I was a little more free when I was working in formal companies than what I am. So that's how I'm keeping myself engaged.
Amazing. So that leads me to my real first question for you. When you were thinking about your retirement or what you will be doing or how you came to be doing what you are doing post-retirement, was that by chance? Was there planning involved? How did it come about that you are busier post-retirement than before you superannuated?
Oh, your question takes me back to something like late 90s. You know, that time I was far away from my retirement, but it so happened that I came across an article in Stanford University magazine. The title of the article was The Road to Self-Renewal. And it was written by one of the very famous professors from Stanford, John Gardner. He was a professor of public service, and he was also secretary health and education in the administration of President Johnson. The article really impressed me, and there were few takeaways which really changed the course of my life and made me think of what I'm going to do after retirement and how meaningful it should be. A couple of things that he said is that we must start thinking well ahead of our retirement, if not decades, but at least 3 years before. And he says we must think how to wind our clock again after it has completely unwound. And those words were very powerful for me. And the end of his article was even more impactful. What he said was that, look, guys, every one of us wants to be interesting, but you ought to start to be interested in what you are going to do. And combination of these two statements really made me think hard. And I think I must start at least thinking and semi-planning what I am going to do after I retirement so that I keep myself active and be relevant to the world. And that's how I said I must do that. And actually, to answer your question, it didn't happen accidentally, but in my case, I indeed planned it. And it was all credit to Professor John Gardner. That's all. I have finished.
I know. I had trouble unmuting myself. Okay. No, thank you so much. Thanks for that amazing share, especially and the recommendation for the professor that Professor Gardner that people should read up if they're looking to be inspired. And that's a lovely thought, right? That it takes planning, and maybe 3 years before retirement is at least what you suggest, if not decades, right?
Absolutely.
To really be thinking and planning for retirement. And that in your case, certainly uh, it took planning to be doing what you're doing post retirement. It was
So
not
true.
accidental. Would you like to share with us a little bit? We covered it, we touched upon it in your introduction, but would you like to tell us what is it that's keeping you busy these days?
Uh, there are n number of activities that I am neck deep in. As you said, I have started a foundation known as Maitri. Maitri is an acronym for making academia industrially relevant and technically relevant to industry. That is Maitri. Now, this Maitri thought came to my mind after I was involved as board of governors in at least 10 to 12 engineering and management institutes all over India. That gave me opportunity to see what is it that is not there in our higher technical education. And since I'm a man of innovation, I always start my journey from finding out what are the gaps. So I always advise people, if you want to do any work, let it be gap based. By gap, I mean, what is it there today and what it needs to be. So if you focus all your work on gaps, I think the probability of success is far better. So to that extent, I sort of identified gaps. And one thing that was hanging in my mind is that this industry institute interaction was sort of a lip service since the time I was a student in IIT. And I was feeling very sad that this thing hasn't really moved to tangible results. So everything put together, I said, these are some of the things which are really lacking. So let me start something on my own on a smaller scale rather than a big national scale. So I put together something like 10 of my friends and colleagues who had solid industrial experience in engineering and who also had a lot of passion in teaching and guiding students. All our intention was that we must contribute to nation building. That was the highest thought in our mind. And we chose this particular path. And when I went deeper into that, I found, unfortunately, although teachers in higher technical education is the most critical link, but I thought we ought to empower them with many, many more skills and then only expect something from them. The fashion of the day is everybody wants to blame and criticize teachers and all such things. But if we really see their life and the kind of work they are subjected to, I think we must empathize with them and we must facilitate them and empower them to do what we want. There is no point in just expecting something. So to that extent, I felt up, and in short, this group particularly has three pillars: students, teachers, and institutes. And I'll just mention one thing, which is a flagship activity of my foundation, which I call industry sabbaticals for engineering college teachers. All that I did was I made sure that the teachers actually gain the knowledge of what is industry, what it is not, what does it want, and what is valid in industry. So I choose some experienced, good professors in engineering and put them into some industries for something like 2-3 months of their summer training. And this has really got a very, very wide acceptance, and I'm flooded with requests every summer. But it so happened that being a small setup, I can't take up more than 25. So I just like to mention that when I was mentioning this to a company, KPIT in Pune, they caught on to this idea and they said, look, we are interested in accepting something like 15 teachers all over India for sabbatical in our company. And this last year was the first year, and I was so happy that some company realized the value of doing that. And the rest is history. So I'm not going to actually dwell more on that. Now, this is one activity. And the second activity is that I help and consult many corporates on skill building for engineers and managers, like innovation management, knowledge management, particularly product development, because that is what I find there is a big gap and lack of information and competence on that. And the third activity that I am really busy in that, international journal, which is known as Research Technology Management, published from Washington. And that's the Innovation and Research Journal. So I'm board of editor member on that. And I spend at least something like 15 hours a week contributing effectively to that. So these are the main activities that I'm doing. And of course, my own IIT for last 12 years, I am very, very involved in mentoring at least 2 students from IIT, BTech, MTech, and PhD. I welcome any 2 of these every year. And I'm so happy that I have been really able to make their careers and help them. So all of them, even 10 years ago, these people are in touch with me, and I'm their family member, and they share everything. And this is something which gives me tremendous satisfaction.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that, Mr. Pandey. I can clearly see why your wife says you're busier now than ever before. Right. And, you shared, you're doing such a wide range of things. And a common theme across all of it, if I may, is the idea of education, of mentoring, of teaching, of connecting, of trying and bridging the gaps that you see between academia and industry. Like giving back in a way. And it's so interesting because one of the focus areas we have at WisdomCircle, as you know, WisdomCircle is a platform to connect retired professionals with opportunities post-retirement. And one of the focus areas we have is education. So, opportunities to be a professor of practice with various universities. The IITs don't struggle to find professors, right? Absolutely. But lots of other universities can use some help. Right, or mentoring opportunities, career counseling opportunities. I mean, so it's clearly something like you have taken your own initiative and you've done so much. And like you were saying, that you have so much more interest and ability to absorb as well, right, in your own foundation, right? And if we could really sort of aggregate all of the supply and demand around it, wonders are possible. But just sharing that it's such a resonating theme, this idea of being involved in education. And thank you so much for everything that you share, everything that you do. But I'm going to pause there. We have Brigadier Pabla back with us. I think Brigadier Pabla, you can hear us, yes?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Amazing. We can hear you too. So we were just discussing how we were just talking with Mr. Pandey about how he went about figuring out what he would do post-retirement and what is it that he is doing post-retirement. Would you like to share this? Huh?
I missed part of that. But
no worries.
So for me, it was a little different scenario. I was working in the army. I joined as a second lieutenant, the junior most officer in 1971. Went through the 71 war. And all the time I was aware that if you go up to the rank of colonel, you retire at 52 years of age. If you retire as a brigadier, it is 54 years of age. If you are a major general, then 56, lieutenant general 58. And 95% of the officers retire as colonel and below. So it was a known fate that you will be retiring around 52, 54 years of age. So there was a time available. So I was aware of this, and I was planning all the time. After doing my engineering at College of Military Engineering, I decided to go, let's say, not slow on my promotions, etc., but I chose a path where I may not get promoted because I had to give advanced career certificate. I went for MTech, not for something called staff college. There is a staff college in Wellington in India, where the officers who are going to rise to brigadiers and major generals, they do spend 1 year there. So instead of that, I went for MTech to IIT Bombay. And the reason was, and I gave an advanced career certificate that I do not mind if I'm not promoted because of this. So I went for MTech. So it was in preparation for my future, because with MTech you have much better, and we are talking about the late 70s and early 80s. So you had a much better future outside the army. Going
Wow.
beyond that, when I landed in the IIT, I also realized what wonderful educational institutions are available within the country, because I came from a village and studied in a village school. Then went to the College of Military Engineering, where you attend classes in uniform. And it is a duty, you can't miss a class. And you are fully disciplined. You sit there like small children, totally disciplined. You attend the class. You may or may not absorb anything, but you will attend all classes every day. So that was the scenario. So it was a little different scenario. But when I landed in the IIT, it was absolutely a very pleasant surprise. So that also helped me decide that academics will be a good option once I retire from the army. So I decided to come back to IIT to do my PhD. Not very easy while being in the army. You'll hardly find anybody in the army who's done his PhD from IIT. There are a lot of officers doing PhD now, pre-retirement. I have got it actually, a lot of them. I went to something called National Defense College, Delhi, NDC. I went and delivered a lecture where those are the best officers. For that also, I gave a adverse career certificate while going for PhD. I said I'm not interested in NDC, which is another 1-year course for those who are going to become generals. So later on, when I was Vice Chancellor of SMU, I went there to deliver a lecture how they should plan their post-retirement.
Wow.
I delivered a lecture and I told them that it is time for you, since you are in the last 3, 4, 5 years of your service, register with some university. And they get MPhil. When they finish that NDC course, they get an MPhil in defense studies. So PhD is just the next step. So I quoted a lot of them to do that PhD. So coming back to my case, so my planning was there right from, let's say, when I was a captain doing my engineering at College of Military Engineering, Pune. Though some of my notions were not right. Because I went on getting my promotions, went to the rank of brigadier. And if I had not decided to leave, I would have gone to be a general in spite of those advanced career certificates. Those the army just safeguards for the army, so that you don't blame them later on that you were not advised at the right time. So it was a pre-planned move on my part, and I decided to leave the army after 34 years of service, where I could have been there for another maybe 5 to 6 years if I kept on getting my promotions. So I decided while doing my MTech and then PhD at IIT that I will change over to academics. And when I left the army, I had 9 different offers.
Wow.
One of them was as CEO of Asian Electronics. It is in Maharashtra. The second one was as a director of Soba Developers Bangalore, another very big company. And then one from IIT Delhi. And from Manipal. Manipal was one of the lowest paid. I joined them.
Your career decisions are full of surprises and wisdom.
Surprised a lot of people. And but it served me well. I spent 1 year as director of SMIT Sikkim. Then after 1 year, I moved to Manipal, Karnataka, as Pro Vice Chancellor and Director of MIT Manipal. Another 3 years, I was sent back to Sikkim as Vice Chancellor of SMU Sikkim. And I had requested for a 2 years tenure there. So after 2 years, they asked me, what we'll extend your tenure. I requested, no, I'm not keen on that. So they moved me to Jaipur to establish the Manipal University, Jaipur. So that was a huge challenge, and with somebody like me who actually came from the army just a few years ago. So, the academic, the rules, the regulations, the university, the ordinances, the statutes of the university, doing all those things, it was a lot of learning for me. And going through the motions of the government to establish a university is not very easy, but
Sure.
it is a challenge worth taking. So
Yeah.
after that, I did 2 more universities, and I did chancellor of one more university. So it's been very eventful 17 years after leaving the.
I'm not even going to try and add 34 and 17, and I'm not going to ask you if you consider yourself retired and all of
Not
that.
to-
No, but
Something I remember to Kamlesh was whether he considers himself retired. He obviously said no. And for me, actually, the word retirement does not exist. So it was superannuation or whatever better word we can use. And as you go along, you grow in your years. It is just the type of work that changes.
right.
I will not be able to take the same challenges that I took during my army career or maybe initial years in education, establishing so many new universities. But you choose maybe work which is more adaptable to your age. But I don't think there is any retirement for anybody. They will do something. They keep busy doing something, and it keeps you healthy, mentally, physically.
Oh, amazing. No, thank you so much. You shared so much on so many different things. And again, if I may, besides your sharing a birth here with Mr. Kamlesh Pandey, there's also this commonality of you spend so much time planning, right? It wasn't a sudden decision for you. Just like Mr. Pandey also shared.
Suddenly, it was not a sudden decision.
Yes, absolutely. Like, so it was so intentional. I mean, intentional over, despite your best efforts, army promoted you and, um, but like it was very intentional that you're shifting into education and doing all of those things. It took a lot of planning.
With Kamlesh, there's much more in common. We studied in the same school in IITBAA.
Oh, yes.
The same professor.
Oh, yes. Your same guide. You had the same guide.
For MTech. Then he left to US for a 10-year assignment there. So I was handed over to halfway through. I went to another professor.
Right.
And, then I went back for my PhD. That was a much younger professor. 15 years later, I came back to IIT for PhD.
That is amazing.
Take that leave from the army.
No, I feel so privileged that, especially I get to have this balcony seat to hearing you share all of this. I've heard this once before and I'm getting to hear it again and I'm taking away so much. And especially because at WisdomCircle, veterans and the defense forces is a focus area for us, right? Because like you shared, sometimes it's not so obvious to a lot of people that there is so much engineering talent within the armed forces, the army, the air force, the navy. Like all the work is not combat, right? Or just logistics and operations.
We also do combat. Let's say in the Corps of Engineers in the army, every officer is an engineer.
Wow.
You're not an engineer when you joined, like I was not an engineer. I was sent to College of Military Engineering. If you do not complete your engineering, you're not retained in the Corps of Engineers. You are sent to maybe non-technical.
Mm-hmm.
So every officer in the Corps of Engineers is an engineer. Some of us do our MTech, and now quite a few of us go for a PhD.
Amazing. So I'm going to give us a moment to sort of take in all that information and move on to another question. So, Mr. Pandey, as you entered, like Brigadier Pabla shared that the exact same work you always did changes, right? You won't do the exact same thing you did at the beginning of your career towards the later years, but you do something. Could you share something about the skills that became more relevant over time, right? As you transitioned from your pre-superannuation career to your post-superannuation part of your career, or whatever you're doing now, what are some skills that you think were more useful or relevant or transferred, if you could share?
Good question. When one talks about skills for retired people like us, all that happens is that we people have accumulated so much of experience and potential with us that after retirement, one good thing, so far as my opinion is concerned, is that we really don't need to develop any skill. We have already done that. And it's not worth developing new skills after we are retired. But there is so much of enrichment behind us in terms of our experience and skill building that, according to me, if somebody wants to do something post retirement, the best thing is to have will more than skill. And if there is one slide which I would like to display, and I would like to take help of that slide and explain it to you. Could you just please project that?
If you could just give me a moment, I'll pull up the correct.
Sure. Yeah, the first one. Yeah, your target. All of us, like I said, are richly experienced. And all that I would like all of you to focus is what should be your focus area. So I am demonstrating this by Venn diagram. Okay, the first circle is the available pond of problems that is requiring solutions. And mind you, this is something which you can expand and expand and expand based on your skills and experience. The second circle on the right side is something that you wanted to do, but you couldn't do because you were heavily into your day-to-day commitments. And all of us have gone through this situation. And the third circle is our skill. That's what I was saying. This is more than skill. I would say that it should be the will. And my experience is that if you plot this Venn diagram, it is the center area where we all should be focusing. That means it should be sort of a combination, a unique combination of your skill and will, which you have already developed, which is another thing is something that you have not been able to do, but you wanted to do it, and whatever is available in society or industry or in nation that is to be done. So if you do that study little bit, and which should not be possible because everybody knows what skills I have already developed, what sort of things are there. And in order to know something more about the pond which has problems, my thing is that one has to go outside the four walls of what we have been thinking and finding out what is it that is there which requires my skills and where I can really solve this. So your target should be a combination of all these three areas. And once you hit upon that, I think you have won the game. And all that I would like to say is that if any of you wants to do that, I'm here to help you. And I can share with you a vast problem pond that is available in our country where these two different circles can be superimposed. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey. Brigadier Pabla, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, my case was slightly different. I had, in fact, a bundle of skills which will not be used in any one job. They could be used partly in various different kinds of jobs. Let's say I was the chief engineer in MES. I undertook a huge number of very large multiple infrastructure projects, construction of buildings, townships, training centers, airports, roads, water supply systems. And so I did that twice, as chief engineer in J&K, and also as commander works engineers in Pune. So I had a lot of construction, let's say, project management skills. I also had air conditioning design. I was a system designer in Bombay, designed very large number of very large air conditioning systems. That is my core education. That's my MTech and PhD work. So that was another skill which was one single skill was good enough for me to land a good job. Then I was commanding army units. I've done a lot of, let's say, administration in the army. In fact, in the 1970s, when MBA programs were just being introduced by universities, we were wondering in the army, what management will they teach? Management is here in the army. Everything. You have management, you have material management, you have logistics management, everything that you can think about. So a lot of skills in management one has when you work in the army. So, and I was also a professor in the College of Military Engineering, and also a visiting professor at Punjab University, Chandigarh, with permission from the army headquarters. So I also had the teaching skill, but the intention was to go to academics. So I accepted a job in academics. So though there is some sort of tweaking required when you come from the army to the civil street. But otherwise, I had a huge bundle of skills, which, as I said, no single job can utilize those skills. I could fit into many different areas. But when I did join academics, the major difference from what I did in the army and what I was to do in the educational civil street was, but in the army, if you passed an order, it will be executed. Nobody is going to ask you whether you're right or wrong. That is not the case in civil. So in the army, you have to be very, very careful to pass your order because it involved people's lives. But so my way of passing orders was similar here also in academics. But people won't take it initially. They won't take it so seriously because they get so many orders from so many different directions. So it was quite annoying for me that the fellow has to be told twice, thrice to do a job. So it took some getting used to for me. And the second difference was, though I had done teaching at College of Military Engineering, Punjab University, but academic administration, let's say the evaluation system. We were also conducting PhD, the PhD instructions, and many UGC, AICT rules, regulations, medical council, because I had a medical college also there. So there's so many rules to learn. So I found that the professors who were working under me had much more knowledge in those areas than I did, in spite of my huge bundle of skills. So I had to learn it from them. And I let them know this, that they know much more than I do in that area, and I'm going to learn from them and then do my job. So they were happy, and it helped me to do that job. There were some few irritants which probably are better left out.
I'm sure there are lots and lots of challenges that one encounters as one shifts gear, especially a gear of moving from the defense forces to the civilian world comes with, not just the skills, but a unique set of challenges as you described, right? And it's so much more. I just have an eye on the time, and it looks like the chat is exploding with questions that people have for each of you. We did have 2 more pre-prepared questions for you, but in the interest of, then the questions were around the challenges and advice you have. But rather than, you just sharing what advice you had in mind, perhaps we open up for questions. And so,
Sure.
In that way, it'll be more relevant. And I believe, Brigadier Pavla, there are a few people from your unit here.
Okay.
Some people have responded. I'll have to scroll back to see their names, but there are people who worked with you in the audience, so they're keen to connect. We'll figure that out later.
Okay.
But
please do that. Give them my contacts freely.
Sure. Cool. All right. So we're going to move into, since so many of you are keen to ask questions, we'll move into the Q&A section of this. The way we will do that is, why don't you, some of you have already sent questions in via chat. Why don't you type in your questions and we'll do our best. We have someone moderating our chat. Nupur, my colleague, is over here. We will pick and then address please also mention whether your question is addressed to both the speakers or to one of them specifically. Please mention by name. We'll give you a moment. Please type in your questions and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. We have 15 minutes. Perhaps we can take 7, 8 questions. If you'd like to unmute and ask, that's okay too. But because we have close to 100 people, I think it'll be better if you send in your questions over chat. And once you select a question, we could ask you to ask it yourself. So if you could, if the audience could please share your questions on chat, and please mention whether it's addressed to Mr. Pandey or Brigadier Pabla or to both. I'm just giving it a moment because I'm sure all of you are thinking of your questions. And I'm also waiting for Nupur to choose a question and give it to me, because I do see many questions. There's a question that just came up about moving from engineering to MBA finance. There's questions about, I'll see, I see a question that's come directly to address to both of you. So the question is, and it's addressed, okay, there are many coming in. Okay, I'll start with, I'm going to close the chat now because I'm going to get confused if I look at all of them all at once. Nupur, you have to keep bringing to my attention once you choose it, right? I'm going to start with the one that caught my eye right now. I think Brigadier Pabla, you started answering this a little bit, but the question is around, it must be so culturally challenging to move from industry to academia, and in your case, Brigadier Pabla, from the armed forces to the civilian world, and within the civilian world, so many different things. So how does one adapt to it, this cultural shift? In any order, it's addressed to both of you. We could start with you, Brigadier Pabla, because you started speaking about it and you mentioned there were irritants because people were.
Repeat of the question. I missed out part of it.
The cultural shift,
Okay,
right?
okay,
The
okay,
cultural shift. How do you prepare for it? How do you adapt to it?
Yeah, there was a huge cultural shift. I spoke about that little, because the army is a very different culture, very disciplined. Not that academics is not disciplined, but the kind of discipline is very different. So you've got to really come down from that mold. So here you're going to deal. I'll answer this through a question which I faced in an interview for Vice Chancellor of Punjab Technical University in 2009. So I was asked by one of the panel, interviewing panel members, that if there is a strike in a college, how will you handle it? So my army way of handling would be very different. So I told him, sir, you have to handle the strike before it happens. So you've got to keep an eye on what's happening on your campuses. And you should be able to discern that there is a problem. You handle it before it happens. It's much more difficult after you to handle after it happens. So he was foxed a little for some time. But then he asked me again. He said, no. Presume that it has happened. Then what will you do? Will you crush them? So then I asked him a counter question. He said, crush whom? If you're talking about an enemy on the border, I will crush him. But these are 18-year-old students. So let's not use words like crush them. If it happens, then I'll have to find out what was the reason, and I will have to accommodate their requirements. So right. I cannot be adamant that I will not agree. So this is an automatic change from civil. So you've got to be prepared to adjust yourself.
Wonderful. As the cultural context changes, keeping your intention on that context itself facilitates that change. Amazing. Mr. Pandey, what are cultural shifts that you had to make as you moved from industry to academia and everything else?
Yeah, there are two main things according to me. And I'm not criticizing or casting any aspersions on academia. They have a different role to play. But if you consider a situation currently, the academia has to change its course of action. It can't be in the same gear that it has been since the time I was a student. That was a different ballgame. So you must have heard the new education policy has come, and it has also introduced changes to make it quite industry relevant, which is the need of the day. So, what happens is that academia is in the mode of working on important problem, but the urgency is totally missing, unfortunately. So if you have a quadrant which specifies the urgent and important part of it, industry is used to working, firefighting with problems. The solution is required yesterday. It can't even wait today. Whereas when you work with academia, that is something which is a big cultural shift. They can't tolerate something being done yesterday, forget about tomorrow. So, but the way to work around it and make sure that they are also a part of the joint work is that you create a quadrant and allot some work which belongs to important but not urgent. That's the way. Unless and until they come forward and we also go to them, nothing is going to work. So the best way is to work around. So that is the urgency and importance. And second thing is commitment. Commitment on duration, the finance, and yes, we will do this in this particular period. So that is something. But if you really want to work around something, there are ways and means, and we did that. So that these are the two things. And the third thing that really worries me is that poor teachers are loaded and loaded and loaded with administrative duties, and they are expected to produce research and do teaching work. When will they do that? I think we have to be empathetic about that and make sure that their load of administrative work has to come down. Then only they will be able to meet their goal of research and making sure that the students are also that sort of work. So this, according to me, was a big cultural shift. But nevertheless, we are working around it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pandey. All right. The next question, and this is addressed to you, I think, to your Venn diagram, Mr. Pandey. How do we expand our the pool problem, like the pool of problems, if they are in areas that are outside or beyond our immediate contacts and circles? If I may, one thing is join WisdomCircle or platforms like us. But
yeah,
really,
very
Mr.
true. Very true. My answer, whether you like it or not, you have to understand one thing. The pond is actually not a pond. According to me, it's an ocean. Now, in ocean, can you ask me a question whether I can expand that ocean? It's already having infinite number of problems. Okay, it's only that you have to have an eye to spot and identify a problem. This is one thing. And in spite of that, if you need any help, I'm there. Please come to me and I will load you, your mind and your body with n number of problems. To that extent, you asked a very good question. Can you go back to my presentation and show me slide number 3 and 4? That is where I knew this question is going to come. So I have already prepared. Next slide. Next. Yeah. Although I have titled this slide as skills, that can also be read as opportunities that are existing. The first thing that is there is, how do I help and be of any use to younger generation? So these are the various things that we can actually bring forth and help them. I'm not going to read. The first star is a collection of all these things that you and me, all of us, have been parents. We are now grandparents, and nobody else can do this role of parental instinct and mentoring and unlocking their potential better than us. So I don't think you need to have any specific skills to do that. That is inborn inside us. Then the second star, read that. This is there. The most important thing, most of us have worked in industry, and who else other than us knows how to convert our knowledge into skills and wealth? In fact, we have worked all these years to convert our skills and experience into wealth. That was one reason why our company tolerated us for 40 years of work, because we converted everything into wealth for them. And that's how they declared the bonuses, and we got incentives and raise and other things. So that is something which you and me ought to do that. Some of the things that are not known to the younger generation and which we can inject into that is that they must know the importance of know why, the why everything is done. I always tell younger generation, there are three ladders of knowledge: know what, know how, and know why. Know what is totally irrelevant today, because at the click of a button, you can have tons of information. So why should I be forced to know, like I was saying, the thermal conductivity of aluminum? I don't need to. Everything is available. In my days, it was a different thing. All that I need to know is the thermal conductivity is not 1000 kilowatts. It is only 30 kilowatts. So long as I know that, that's good enough. Know how. Know how has become a thing of past. Now, unless and until we answer the why of everything, and you know why, where does it come from? It comes from the enrichment of experience that we have had for so many years. So who other than all of us is going to be enriching the lives of younger generation? And anybody who wants that. Go to the next slide. Yeah. Another thing that we can tell younger generation is, I can tell you, even BTech students from IIT, and this is through my personal experience of mentoring, poor guys are totally ignorant about what is industry. What are we going to do in industry? What am I expected to be there in industry? What are the functions and where do I fit in? What are the career prospects for me? They are totally confused. And I can understand this situation in a college like Tuljapur and Buldhana and other small places. But when you come across students, bright students from IIT and in my own IIT, that's very unnerving for me. So who else can do that? And we have 40, 30, 50 years of experience. All that is there is you invoke that experience and apply that and help them. Now, the last thing is something which I can say that it is the technical skill that all of us put together have developed. And I'm sure any one of you who is listening to me has more than half a dozen skills already built into his mind. So what else do you want more? And these are the problems which are burning problems in many industries. And not only that, but I am coming from big corporate houses. But I'll tell you, if you really want to help and want that help to be really valued, you ought to go to small and medium scale industry. There are so many problems and poor fellows cannot afford to get it done from big corporate houses. For a problem where a consultancy firm asks them crores of rupees, you can get it done in thousands. So isn't it a win-win situation? And these are all the problems which are already there. So other than that, if somebody wants additional problem, which is fitting into the Venn diagram that I displayed, I will be very happy, more than happy to individually sit with those people, come to some industries, introduce them and start working. So I urge all of you not to wait for this skill and will thing, because according to me, many people may not like. Can you go to slide number 2? Next to Venn diagram. Yeah, actions and skills, all that I would urge you to get into action. That's why I say, remember the Nike slogan, just do it. Don't worry for where is the problem, what pond is there and all such thing. I think you must have a will. If you don't have a will, have Kamlesh Pandey with you and he will deliver will. Okay. So when you talk about skill and all, I think this is a chicken and egg story. Okay. And you have to come out of, you use your skills and then get into action. Okay. And once you get into the action, you automatically develop your skill and you will be amazed that even after retirement, you have added a couple of skills to your own bag of skills. And that is something where you will be on the top of the world.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey. Clearly, you had prepared for questions, and we are at time. We are at 6 p.m. and we do have a lot more questions. We have taken note of all of that, and a suggestion I think that has come in is we will actually take all of the questions and send it to both Brigadier Pavla and Mr. Pandey, and we'll try and get answers to you through email or other channels. Post this, because clearly there is a lot that you want to do. I just wanted to mention this particular bit about SMEs, right? So, for example, this is one of the reasons that our founder Neeraj Sagar, right? And we are a team of about 20 odd people. WisdomCircle is about a year old as a platform. SMEs and startups and even big corporate houses are a focus area for us, because often there are new problems, or it's a small organization. There are problems that there are not big budgets to tackle with. But if those problems are tackled, it is a huge payout in lots of senses, in terms of impact, in terms of revenue. But there is a challenge, there is a gap in the talent available. And sometimes you can't afford someone who's on a career path. Like, a career progression is not possible in a company. You need someone to come in a project basis and then go away. So there are so many reasons why, people who may or may not consider themselves retired, but are beyond at least 50 and have this wealth of experience. There are so many ways to contribute. And clearly this conversation is just taking a pause. It will continue. We will stay in touch. Since all of you are still around, maybe I'll invite just a word of advice from Brigadier Pavla. Any advice, sir, that you have for those planning their retirement journeys?
Okay, yes. As I said earlier, there should be no retirement as such. It should be just change of work. There is work available for every age, for everyone. And by the time you cross 60, you have enough skills to fit into a number of jobs. So now platforms like WisdomCircle are available. So getting in touch with them probably can help, because on your own, you may not either apply, or the employers do not know you. They don't know that you exist. So it's better to make yourself available, make yourself known. And there'll be work to do. All kinds of work. As I said, you choose the work that you prefer to do at your age. It changes. It is not the same at all ages. So choose something that you would like to do. It may add to your income, or it may be just voluntary work, but it will be a good idea. Do something, you stay physically and mentally fit. Otherwise, it becomes a burden.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And all of us at WisdomCircle are so, delighted, just so happy that both of you are part of our platform. And that's how we discovered you as speakers for this event, right? It's a matter of esteem for us. Thank you once again for being a part of this. Clearly, I don't have a very structured vote of thanks prepared, and that's the nature of being a startup and doing conversations like this on a Saturday evening in India. But thank you to the audience who joined from across the world. And I do notice there's a lot of questions and requests around staying connected with the speakers. We will do our best through the email channels of IIT Bombay Alumni Association to get you answers to the questions you have in mind, and figure out how we can keep this conversation going. This is a series of conversations. It definitely does not end here, but this session unfortunately does end over here. Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanishka. It was a wonderful opportunity and I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you, Brigadier.
Thank you.
Thank you.